an unbelievable disaster. Thousands of soldiers and billions worth of equipment lost. Could it have been avoided? Watch the video till the end to find out. Hello back. In this part, we continue together the story of one of the greatest battles in history, the Battle of Stalingrad. If you haven't watched the previous episodes yet, I recommend starting there, because the events are deeply connected and you'll understand how things led up to the decisive moment we're talking about today. Now, let's dive together into the next chapter of this legendary war. 8. Aftermath of the battle. If you pause for a moment in front of the numbers of the Battle of Stalingrad, you will realize how enormous the catastrophe truly was. The Red Army suffered devastating losses. Estimates place the number of soldiers killed between 1 and 2 million. Just imagine it, a million human beings. On the German side, the situation was no less horrifying. Their losses ranged from 750,000 to nearly 1 million. With around 150,000 confirmed dead. And beyond the human toll, the German army lost an immense amount of equipment, thousands of artillery pieces, tens of thousands of vehicles, hundreds of aircraft, and more than 200 tanks gone without return. And when you look at the city itself, it collapsed. Nearly 90% of Stalingrad was destroyed. Homes, streets, factories, everything turned to ashes. In short, this wasn't an ordinary battle. It was a terrifying human and material cost the world still talks about today. Stalingrad was not just a Soviet victory, it was also a massive disaster for Germany. It marked the first decisive victory for the Soviet Union, turning the tide of the war on the Eastern Front. Stalingrad had far-reaching effects on the course of the war. The Red Army's subsequent advance across Soviet territory prevented Germany from moving effective forces to the North African front and paved the way for the execution of Operation Overlord in the West. The battle proved that the German offensive was no longer capable of achieving a decisive strategic victory. From that moment, a defensive strategy became Germany's only viable option, while the Allies grew confident enough to launch simultaneous offensives in both East and West. Even after the war, Stalingrad became a powerful symbol of the heroism shown by the Red Army. A. Human and material losses. After the offensive on Budapest on 29 October 1944, a different axis of attack through northeastern Czechoslovakia was favored. Parts of the German 6th Army began reorganizing and forming new units in the region at different times. By the end of the offensive operations in Ukraine, a strategic assessment focusing on destroying the German army beyond the Dnieper showed the potential for a rapid Soviet advance into the Carpathian region. At the end of January 1945, the first orders were issued to halt operations along the broad front. By February, the situation on the boundaries had shifted significantly in favor of the Red Army, forcing preparations for offensive actions in Poland. The strategy developed during these months and finalized in 1945 could hardly be described as interior lines. It more closely resembled the principles of combined fronts through concentrated force. The 4th Army Group, intended to act as a flank group in eliminating Germany's Army Group Center, was unable to conduct effective operations until 1945. Yet, preparations were made for an advance toward Wrocław on the western boundary. Looking back at the long occupation of Ukraine, one thing becomes clear. The previously advanced zones gradually weakened and lost density, almost as if they were eroding over time.
Although the Soviet Army gained significant experience in 1943 and early 1944, particularly in advancing through narrow corridors and operating along interior lines, many of these lessons weren't fully absorbed.
Maneuvers that relied on clever envelopments in 1944 turned just 1 year later into wide pincer movements against the German army groups. Furthermore, The international situation and military conditions at the time forced major changes in priorities. Instead of focusing on London, plans shifted towards southern Germany. This shift influenced the structure of operations and redirected attention toward eastern Poland, where forces remained in nearly the same positions for a long time with minimal movement. Another major feature was the proposed front along the southern belt of Czechoslovakia, which was thoroughly discussed in multiple operational studies. This proposal was based on shared administrative and structural considerations among the Czechs, Czechoslovaks, Romanians, and Hungarians. It was seen as a favorable route for supply and rest operations. And now, don't forget to read the practical lesson learned from today's story. It's waiting for you on our blog. The blog link is in the description. Discover the important lessons you can apply in your life. Read it after you finish the video. Rebuilding Stalingrad. Pay close attention here. The fortifications and buildings in Stalingrad continued to crumble even more than a year after the battle ended. Yet despite this, the reconstruction of the city became inevitable. 30 kilometers from Stalingrad, German army units and construction detachments began removing and transporting building materials on 27 February 1943. But the operation was ordered to stop shortly afterward. By late April, the commander of the armored army responded to Soviet command proposals, saying clearly, "We cannot advance without strong transportation and restored industrial capacity. Even Stalingrad needs rapid recovery." Because of this, a large number of construction detachments were gathered inside Stalingrad, and as a result, their factories began significantly increasing production. When the front finally quieted for a short period, several units that had withdrawn from combat immediately joined reconstruction efforts. During this pause in fighting, the city's construction company prepared plans to transfer building materials to Stalingrad, then later developed broader plans for the city's reconstruction. However, it wasn't easy. Every shipment of construction materials had to be calculated with military considerations in mind. For that reason, a large portion of the materials was entrusted to the Tsereteli company to work on the railway line between Idyatinskaya and Stalingrad and to help restore factories damaged in the battle. When the front reduced its use of certain materials, especially after halting construction in Vasilievka in the summer of 1943, these materials were redirected straight to Stalingrad. There was also unusual cooperation between Soviet construction teams and certain companies attached to the German occupation along this railway. In this way, reconstruction began even before the main construction projects had officially ended. As soon as the plans were ready and the materials secured, a massive flow of workers and engineers began arriving in Stalingrad. Their numbers increased even more after official government projects for rebuilding specific parts of the city were issued on 9 July 1943. The Soviet states' economic unions coordinated efforts to relocate Stalingrad's factories. Early reconstruction plans show the intention to relocate companies like Grundig and Shorich. Large quantities of production materials had already accumulated in 1942. And under German occupation, the city contained significant stores of finished goods. Later, essential industrial materials began flowing into nearby plants and eventually into Stalingrad itself. But here's the real question. Did all those sacrifices truly have to happen? Or would the entire war have taken a different turn if just one decision had been made differently? If you liked the video, don't forget to support me with a like and subscribe to the channel, so you'll get the newest episodes of the Stalingrad battle series as soon as they're released. The story isn't over yet. There are still many thrilling chapters waiting for you, so stay tuned.